Hello everyone. Welcome to Keeping It Real by Housing.com. We are the longest running and top rated show in the real estate industry. In this episode, we have a special guest, Mr. Vikas Wadhawan, CFO of REA India and business head at PropTiger.com, as we explore the recovery in rental activity in the real estate industry, staging a smart rebound from the lows of the pandemic. Plus, what is the difference between stamp duty and registration fee? The details of all these and much more in this episode. The buzz is back in the commercial towers across major cities amid humming economic activity and growing footfalls in offices. This, in turn, seems to have triggered recovery in the residential real estate market also. This is showing up in the numbers too. The findings of Housing.com's Rental Insights substantiates the rebound in the rental market in India. According to the report, the rental activity, which had declined during the pandemic, has witnessed a robust recovery since 2021, owing to the businesses reopening and several firms adopting hybrid or full-time work policies. Bearing testimony to this, Housing.com's IRIS Index, which gauges the upcoming rental demand in key 42 cities of India, has consistently remained above the 100-point mark since June 2021. By the end of the first half of 2023, the index had reached a 9-month peak, standing at 131 points. A deeper look suggests that the majority of the rental activity is concentrated in the top 8 cities of India. Major commercial and IT hubs such as Gurugram, Pune, Bengaluru and Hyderabad have experienced a strong resurgence and currently maintain index scores exceeding 200 points. We spoke to Mr. Vikas Wadhawan, CFO REA Indian business head, PropTiger.com, to understand the trends and the underlying reasons. Listen in. Hello and a warm welcome, Vikas. Delighted to have you on the show yet again.
Thanks, Gaurav. It's always good to be on the show and lovely talking to you.
Likewise, Vikas. Vikas, what is the major factor driving the rebound in the rental real estate market in recent months? Would it be correct to say that a recovery in the broader economy has cascaded through to the rental market too, as companies seek to expand and people move into houses near the offices in the commercial and IT hubs? Vikas?
Sure, Gaurav. So, yes, there are one big factor is that the broader recovery in the economy is driving this demand. But another factor is that a lot of companies are now asking people to come back to office in some form and shape, whether it is 5 days a week or 2 days a week. But there is some kind of a coming back to office sentiment going on in most of the companies, where, if you may recall, when we were talking almost a year and a half back, we were talking about that people have gone back to their smaller cities and companies are allowing people to work remotely, and some of the large companies gone ahead and aggressively announced their work from home policies. But we are seeing the reversal of that sentiment in the recent past. So my sense is that in the times to come, it will not going to be a work from home kind of an environment. It will be some kind of a hybrid where people will be expected to come to office at least 2 or 3 days in a week, and the rest of the days they can work from home, which means they have no option but to come back to the bigger cities where their office location is, and hence they need to come back and start taking property on rent and settle in those big cities. That is one big factor which is driving the rental demand. And second, as you rightly said, the overall strong recovery in the market is driving this demand, and especially with a lot of investment in infrastructure, which is driving not only the economic growth but also urbanization in India, and hence people are moving from smaller towns and cities to the bigger cities, which is driving the demand in the rental market.
Vikas, by June 2023, Housing.com's IRIS Index had scaled a 9-month peak. Help us understand this. What is the key underlying trend that is emerging out of the IRIS Index? What do you foresee for the medium term particularly, Vikas?
So in the IRIS Index, Gaurav, as you know, we track the overall rental demand sentiment in the key 42 cities in India. And it has, as you rightly pointed out, has consistently remained above 100 point mark, which means that the demand is consistently higher in these major markets or key markets. And in the end of H1 of 2023, it scaled to a new height of 131 points, which shows a strong recovery in the rental demand. Some factors which is driving it is, as we just spoke about, that people are expected to come back to office in some form and shape, overall recovery in the broader economy, which means more jobs are getting created and people are getting opportunities in these big commercial hubs. And that is also reflected if we kind of break down this data and start looking at city by city. I mean, look at cities like Hyderabad, where some of the pockets like High Tech City and Gachibowli, we've seen the rental value has increased from by 16 to 24%, 16 and 24% in these particular pockets, because these are tech hubs of Hyderabad, which is growing very fast. And as people are now expected to come back to office, we are seeing a shortage in the supply than the demand, and hence the rental values are increasing. A similar trend has been observed in Pune and Bangalore. So I think one big driver which is showing reflecting in our IRIS index is the tech companies, and that's where it is reflected in some of the tech centers like Hyderabad, Pune, Bangalore, or Gurugram. Tech companies which were very bullish about work from home are now coming up with the policies, which is some form of hybrid, where people are expected to come back to offices. And that's what is reflected in these cities. And the second, a broader recovery in the economy is driving this demand.
Well, it is interesting that you talk about the decisions of the IT sector, many of whom have asked employees to come back to offices in either a hybrid form or, in some cases, 5 days a week. To what extent is the double-digit rise in property prices been a contributing factor in increasing the rental activity? What are the trends that you are noticing in micro markets?
So I'll answer this question in yes and no, because Gaurav, we've always observed that when the property prices are going up, people are often tempted to make a decision of buying the home sooner than later, because they do not want to miss the bus, and they want to catch it sooner than later before the next price rise. But it could also lead to growth in the rental market, because if the property prices are becoming quote unquote affordable for a particular category of people, and in India, as we know, that our rental yields are always hovering at around 3 to 3.5%, it sometimes is cheaper to rent a property than buying a property. So people who can't arrange their finances to buy the property when the property prices are going up are often tempted to move to the rental properties. So I think it's a mixture of both the things. While property prices are going up, generally is a trigger of more demand, because investors and people who can afford, they make that decision. But the people who are not able to arrange finances are often kind of move towards the rental property.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you for dropping by and sharing your deep insights and perspective on the subject. Always a delight to host you.
Likewise, Gaurav. Thank you very much for hosting me on the show.
What is the difference between stamp duty and registration fee? Let's break it down. First and foremost, we need to understand that the two levies are paid for different purposes. Home buyers in India must pay stamp duty along with a registration fee at the time of property registration in the sub-registrar's office. This pops the question, why are there two different charges? Is stamp duty and registration fee the same thing? If not, is paying both mandatory? So what is stamp duty? Property buyers in India must pay a stamp duty to their state's revenue department at the time of registration. The stamp duty is paid to procure non-judicial stamp papers issued by the state government. all rules and regulations related to stamp papers and stamp duty are elaborated in the Indian Stamps Act. What is a registration fee? Registration charge is the fee buyers must pay to the authorities to avail of the property registration services. All rules and regulations related to registration are elaborated in the Registration Act 1905. How are the two different? Land in India is a state subject. To levy and collect taxes on transactions related to land and property, states have been given the power to issue and sell stamp paper. Stamp papers provide legal validity and enforceability to property-related agreements made between two parties. Stamp duty is thus the fee a home buyer pays to procure stamp papers of the appropriate worth from the Revenue Department. Property registration amounts to a great deal of paperwork on part of the Revenue Department. In that sense, the registration fee is more of a service charge paid to the state. Which laws in India regulate stamp duty and registration fee? Receipts from stamp duty and registration fees are regulated under the Indian Stamp Act 1899 and the Registration Act 1908, while the twin duties are framed and altered by the states. While levying of stamp duty is entirely a state subject, registration of deeds and documents is included in the concurrent list of the Constitution. The power to legislate on this subject is thus vested in both the Union Legislature and the state legislature. What is the difference between stamp duty and registration fee rates? States levy different stamp duties on different instruments related to property transactions. Stamp duty and property transactions differ from state to state. Within a state, stamp duty and property transactions differ from instrument to instrument. For instance, in most states, stamp duty on a sale deed would typically be higher than the stamp duty on, say, a will or power of attorney. That's it from us for this episode. We shall be back again with a fresh episode of Keeping It Real by Housing.com with information and insights on the real estate industry. Whether you are a pro or a beginner, we're here to keep you informed and entertained in the world of Indian real estate. This is Keeping It Real by Housing.com, where we keep it real always. You can catch the episode on Housing.com, on the Housing.com app, on earshot.in, Spotify.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Ghana.com, and Geo7. Take care and stay safe.